Among the many customs in Buddhism, there is one where devotees offer gifts and donations to the temple and monks. They often have their names engraved on it. And as we'll see, this is not a new practice. In the previous episode, we saw how James Prinsep gathered several copies of Brahmi inscriptions with the help of others. He then carefully studied those inscriptions and used clever methods to read certain patterns and words. By the end of which, he had gathered several clues to the deciphering of the Brahmi script. We also saw how certain bilingual Indo-Greek coins acted as a sort of Rosetta Stone for Brahmi and were used by Christian Lassen to read some Brahmi words. Now, let's finish the story. News of Professor Lassen's success with the Indo-Greek coins soon reached Prinsep, and he decided to apply the coin idea himself. Prinsep was soon able to understand the phonetic values of a few conjunct consonants, but a key discovery among that was the identification of this letter, which represents the sound S. This letter was useful in his next breakthrough, which would finally decipher the Brahmi script. Let's see how that happened. Sanchi is a popular historical site situated in central India. It contains several structures from antiquity, including Buddhist viharas, stupas, and temples. There are many inscriptions on these monuments, and in these inscriptions was the final clue for Prinsep. He noticed that several of those inscriptions ended with the same letters. And amongst them, a few preceded with the earlier discovered S. Let's hear what Prinsep has to say about it. Prinsep noticed that several of those inscriptions ended with the same letters. Prinsep was also aware of the present custom in the Buddhist temples where offerings and presents were presented as flags, images, and small chaityas, each bearing the name of the donor. Also noted was the frequent occurrence of the letter S, being the Sa of Pali or Sya of Sanskrit, meaning of so and so. And the final clue was the presence of the vowel A and the Anuswar, which was also present in Devanagari, which led to the speedy recognition of the word Danam, meaning gift. This discovery also led to the discovery of two letters, the and na. And Prinsep had become so familiar with the other alphabets that he could name them on reinspection. Thus the words Danam, repeating at the end of every donative inscription, indeed came as a gift to Prinsep. Having now possessed the key, he went on to apply it to several of the coins and inscriptions that he had come across earlier. In the next 1 year, he collated all his data and published the final key of Brahmi consonants and vowels. This was the culmination of 5 decades long effort in the deciphering of Brahmi. So what was the point of all this effort? Let us look at the impact and aftermath of the deciphered Brahmi on history. As covered in this series, we have seen that most of the Brahmi inscriptions were found on ancient pillars and rocks. This particular inscription, which we had seen in episode 2, was notable. It was found repeated on pillars spread across the Indian subcontinent. It was now readable. It read, Devanam Piye Piyadasi Laja Hevam Aha, which meant, the beloved of God, King Piyadasi, spoke thus. Since these pillars are found across India, Prinsep believed them to be edicts of a king who had ruled large parts of the Indian subcontinent. But there was a problem. There is no mention of a King Piyadasi in any of the genealogical tables of the Puranas. A mighty king such as Piyadasi would surely have been mentioned in the ancient texts. Then the question was, who was Piyadasi and why is his name not mentioned in the historical texts? Prinsep's search for King Piyadasi led him to a translation of the Mahavamsa. The Mahavamsa is a historical chronicle of Ceylon written in the 5th century. It had been translated from Pali by George Turner. Remember this guy, we'll come back to him in a minute. Within this text, Prinsep found the name of Devanam Piya Piyatissa, which sounded very close to Piyadasi. Prinsep learned that Piyatissa had introduced Buddhism in Ceylon along with the help of Dharmashoka of Jambudvipa, who had sent his children Mahinda and Sangamita along with some monks and the Buddha's relics to the island. Prinsep concluded that King Piyatissa of Ceylon was in fact King Piyadasi, but this explanation failed to explain why a king of Ceylon would inscribe his inscriptions all across India. This ends Prinsep's role in the story of Brahmi. He was a stalwart with a deep curiosity of learning and a keen sense of connecting things. After deciphering the Brahmi script in 1838, he returned to England, having spent nearly 20 years in India. Unfortunately, he passed away shortly afterwards, having literally worked himself to death. The British went on to build a monument in Calcutta to commemorate his life's work. Meanwhile, the search for the real Piyadasi was still going on, because Prinsep's conclusion that King Piyatissa of Ceylon being Piyadasi was not on solid ground. A year after Prinsep's conclusion, George Turner discovered the text Deepavamsa. It was a precursor to the Mahavamsa, which he had earlier translated. Deepavamsa was composed in the 3rd century and had some very interesting lines. Let's check them out. 218 years after the Parinibbana of the Sambuddha, Piyadasana was anointed king. The grandson of Chandragupta, the son of Bindusara, King Ashoka, while a mere prince, was sub-king of Ujjaini, charged with collecting the revenue of that province. Ashoka ruled in Patliputra, best of towns. 3 years after his coronation, he was converted to Buddha's faith. So, Piyadasi turned out to be Ashoka of the Mauryan dynasty. To confirm this, an edict was later found with the whole sentence Devanam Piye Piyadasi Ashoka Raja, which meant the beloved of the god Piyadasi, King Ashoka. Ashoka's empire would have scaled much of India and was only surpassed by the British. He was an important force in the spread of Buddhism, much like what Constantine would do for Christianity centuries later. He sent emissaries to Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Burma, Nepal, Thailand, Afghanistan, and even Greece. He is said to have built 84,000 stupas and viharas. He redistributed the Buddha's relics and even conveyed the third Buddhist council. So the deciphering of Brahmi led to the rediscovery of Ashoka, one of the greatest Indian emperors. Also in Ashoka's edicts is one of the earliest references of the Sakya Muni. This is none other than the Buddha himself. This reference is important because it is only 200 years later than the supposed death of the Buddha and acts as solid evidence of the Buddha's existence as a historical figure and not merely a mythological one. The story of Brahmi is one of human ingenuity and resolve. It shows us the diversity of people that were involved with it. Indians, Greeks, Turks, Mughals, and the British. It revealed to us an important past of the subcontinent, one that had been lost to time, at least in the public's imagination. I do hope you like this series. If you haven't seen the previous episodes yet, do watch them. I will link them in the description box below. And for more history related content, stay tuned to this channel.